Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Friday, February 27th, 2026. And I have to say, just looking at the calendar today, if you are working in the world of speech pathology right now,
Oh, absolutely.
or, if you are the person in the back office sweating over medical billing for a rehabilitation clinic, the air probably feels a little heavy right now.
Heavy is a really good word for it. It feels a bit like the barometric pressure dropping before a major storm.
Right.
You know the rain is coming, you can see the dark clouds on the horizon, but you aren't quite sure where the lightning is actually going to strike yet. It's
Yes.
this wild mix of confusion, inevitability, and just this frantic need to prepare.
That is a perfect description because we are staring down the barrel of a massive shift. We are really talking about the end of an era here. For over 20 years, there's this one code, CPT code 92507.
The legendary 92507.
It was the Swiss Army knife of speech therapy billing.
That is exactly what it was. I mean, you have a patient with a stutter, 92507.
A stroke survivor with aphasia.
92507. A kid with a lisp, 92507. It was a single, untimed code that covered everything from simple articulation drills to the most complex neurogenic voice therapy. It was basically the bucket that held the entire profession.
And as of right now, looking at the documents we have pulled for this deep dive, that Swiss Army knife is being confiscated.
Completely taken away.
It is being retired. And in its place, we aren't getting a new knife. We are getting a highly complex, specialized toolkit of 10 different time-based codes.
We are moving from a junk drawer approach, and I use that term because that's exactly how the auditors see it, to a highly granular, data-driven system. And this transition is scheduled to take full effect in 2027. But the decisions shaping it are happening literally this week.
So our mission for this deep dive is to dissect this transition. We have a lot of source material to get through. We are looking at internal documents from the medical associations, specifically their Relative Value Update Committee recommendations.
Right.
We also have urgent updates from the Speech Association spanning from August 2025 all the way to right now, February 2026. And we have to talk about the strict confidentiality agreements binding this entire process.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. We need to understand the why. Why kill a code that everyone was comfortable with? We need to understand the what. What is this new 10-code family? And crucially, the how. The new math of billing that is going to drive everyone crazy if they do not learn it right now.
And we definitely need to talk about the who, because there is a bit of a mystery developing in the timeline involving an unknown party trying to change the rules at the very last minute.
We will get to that mystery for sure. So let us start with the core conflict. Why is this happening? Why fix it if it ain't broke?
Well, according to the Medical Association, and we are looking at their internal recommendations here, it was broke, or at least it was flashing red on their dashboard.
The high volume growth trigger.
Exactly. The Medical Association and Medicare run these screens on billing data. They look for anomalies, and 92507 was a massive anomaly.
I'm looking at the utilization data right here in our source stack. Between 2017 and 2022, Medicare claims for 92507 jumped by over 100%.
That is staggering growth for a mature medical code.
We went from about 245,000 claims in 2017 to nearly 820,000 claims in 2022.
Right.
That is basically a quadrupling of volume in just a few years.
And when auditors see that, they ask questions. They ask, did the number of people with speech disorders suddenly quadruple? Or is this code being used as a catch-all for things it wasn't really intended for?
The audit perspective.
Right. They viewed 92507 as overly broad. It was black box. They were paying millions of dollars out for 92507, but they couldn't tell from the code alone if that money was going toward stuttering therapy, voice rehab, or cognitive linguistic work. It was all just therapy.
So they decided to break the black box open.
They mandated that the code be split. They wanted specificity. They wanted to know exactly what they were paying for.
Which brings us to the first major section of our deep dive, the new architecture, the 10-code set.
This is the meat of the change. We are replacing one code with a family of 10.
In the structure, it's completely different. It is not just pick the right disorder anymore. It is pick the right disorder and the right time.
Correct. The new system relies on a base code and an add-on code. The base code always represents the initial 30 minutes of the session. The add-on code represents each additional 15 minutes.
We are going to get into the math of that in a minute, but let us look at the clinical categories first. They have broken the profession down into 4 main food groups, plus a combo platter.
That is a really good way to put it. The 4 main categories are fluency, speech sound production, language, and voice.
Let us walk through them for the listeners so you know exactly where your patients fit. First up, fluency.
This is your stuttering and cluttering. This replaces the generic bucket for fluency disorders. If you are a fluency specialist, you have your own specific codes now, a base code and an add-on code.
Nice and clean. Next is speech sound production.
This is the motor side of speech. Articulation disorders, phonological processes, apraxia of speech, dysarthria. If the problem is physically producing the sound, it goes here.
Okay, then language.
This is the cognitive side. Receptive and expressive language disorders. So, aphasia resulting from a stroke, language deficits from a traumatic brain injury. If the problem is understanding or formulating language, it goes here.
And finally, voice.
This covers upper airway dysfunction, resonance disorders, vocal nodules, paradoxical vocal fold motion. Basically, the mechanics of the vocal cords and airway.
Now let us talk about that combo platter. I see a category here for speech sound production and language. Why did they make a specific code for that combination?
This is direct acknowledgement of pediatric reality. Think about a 5-year-old in therapy. They rarely have just an articulation issue or just a vocabulary issue. They almost always have both.
Right.
They can't say their R sounds, and they also can't form complex sentences.
It is a mixed bag.
Exactly. Now, without a combo code, a clinician might try to build a speech sound-based code and the language-based code for the same session. And that would break the billing rules, which we will discuss shortly. So, to keep it clean, they created a dedicated base code for when you were treating both simultaneously.
So if you are doing both, you must use the combo code. You cannot double dip.
Precisely. Use the combo base code, and if it goes long, you use the combo add-on code.
Now, I have to ask you about the elephant in the room. Or rather, the elephant that is not in the room.
I think I know exactly where you're going.
Auditory processing.
Yes. This is the detail that is keeping a lot of clinicians up at night right now.
I'm looking at the text of the old code, 92507. It explicitly said treatment of speech, language, voice, communication, and the auditory processing disorder. It was right there in the name.
It was explicitly labeled. You could point to it and say, that is what I am treating.
And in the new 10-code family.
It is gone.
Just gone.
The headers are fluency, speech sound, language, and voice. The words auditory processing do not appear anywhere in the code descriptors for the individual treatment codes.
But wait, looking at the source documents, it is still listed in the group therapy code, 92508.
That is the bizarre inconsistency. The group code kept the old phrasing, but the new individual codes dropped it entirely.
So what does that mean for you if you treat this? Did auditory processing disorder just cease to exist in the eyes of the medical association?
It creates a massive gray area. The implication, though it is not explicitly spelled out anywhere in these documents yet, is that auditory processing is likely subsumed under language. If you are treating a processing disorder, you are treating a receptive language deficit.
But that is an assumption.
It is a huge assumption. And for clinicians who specialize in auditory processing, it is a dangerous assumption. Because if you build a language code and your clinical notes are all about auditory discrimination and processing speed, an auditor might come in 5 years later and say, hey, this doesn't match the code description.
It is a silence in the text that causes a lot of anxiety. It leaves clinicians without a clear home for their work.
It really does. And it is one of the main things people are watching closely in this upcoming April meeting. Will there be a clarification? Or is this specialty just being quietly pushed into the background?
Okay, that covers the structure. Now we need to get into the weeds. The new math. Because moving from an untimed code to a timed code is not just a suggestion, it is a strict rule set.
This is where careers will be made or broken. Or at least where audits will be failed. 92507 was untimed. You did the session, you billed the code, the payer assumed it was about 60 minutes, but if you only did 45, you still billed 92507.
And now?
Now you have to count the minutes, precise documentation. And you have to understand the midpoint rule.
Okay, let us really unpack the midpoint rule for the listener. This is the aha moment for billing under the new system.
It is simple math, but it has huge implications. In the CPT system, a unit of time is attained when you pass the midpoint of that unit.
So let us look at the base code. It is defined as the initial 30 minutes.
The midpoint of 30 is 15. So to build the base code, you must pass 15 minutes. You must hit 16 minutes.
So the range is 16 minutes to what?
To 37 minutes.
16 to 37. Okay, explain the 37 part.
The base code covers you up to 30. If you go over 30, you start looking at the add-on code. The add-on is a 15-minute unit.
And the midpoint of 15 is 7.5.
Right, and you round it up to 8. So to build the add-on, you need to have provided at least 8 minutes of additional therapy past the 30-minute mark.
So 30 minutes for the full base, plus 8 minutes for the add-on. That is 38 minutes total.
Exactly. So if your session lasts 37 minutes,
I only bill the base code.
correct. You have not crossed the threshold for the second unit.
That is brutal. That means minute 31 through minute 37 are effectively free labor in the eyes of the billing system.
That is the reality of the midpoint rule. You do not get credit for those 7 minutes. But conversely, if you work 16 minutes, you get paid for the full 30-minute value. So it cuts both ways.
I see. It averages out across your caseload, but you absolutely have to know the thresholds.
And you have to document direct one-on-one patient contact. The sources are very clear on this do not count rule.
All right, the do not count rule. Let us make sure that is crystal clear.
You cannot count the time you spent prepping materials before the kid arrived. You cannot count the time you spent writing the SOAP note after they left. You cannot count the time spent scheduling their next appointment. The clock only runs while you are actively providing therapy to the patient.
Okay, here's a tricky scenario that jumped out in the notes. The 32-minute requirement.
Yes. This is for the ambitious clinician who wants to bill 2 different base codes in one single day.
Let us say I have a patient who stutters, which is fluency, and also has a voice problem, which is voice. Those are 2 totally separate categories. Can I bill the fluency-based code and the voice-based code on the same day?
You can, but you have to meet the time requirements for each one independently.
So 16 minutes for the first.
And 16 minutes for the second one.
So the total session time must be at least 32 minutes of distinct services.
Correct. If you do a 20-minute session and you spend 10 minutes on fluency and 10 minutes on voice, you cannot bill both base codes. You haven't met the 16-minute minimum for either of them.
So what do? You would technically be billing nothing, or just one of them.
You would probably have to choose the dominant therapy and bill that one base code, provided you hit 16 minutes total. But you couldn't bill 2.
And this is different from the speech and language combo code we talked about earlier.
Right. Remember, this speech and language combo exists to prevent you from even trying to bill 2 base codes for that mix. But for distinct things like fluency and voice, the 32-minute math is the golden rule. 16 plus 16.
This is going to require a lot of mental gymnastics for clinicians who are used to just checking a single box at the end of the day.
It is. It turns the therapy session into a constant math problem. You are going to be watching the clock constantly.
Let us shift gears and talk about the money, or, strictly speaking, the value, the relative value units.
This is where the rubber meets the road. 92507 was a highly valued code. It had a work RVU of 1.30.
1.30, okay. And new base codes, what do they look like?
They vary slightly. Fluency is proposed at 0.92. Speech sound is 0.90, language is 1.00, voice is 0.98.
So my initial reaction looking at those numbers is, hey, you cut my pay. You went from 1.30 down to 0.90.
That is the exact reaction a lot of people are having out in the field.
Yeah.
But it is an apples to oranges comparison.
Because of the time factor.
Exactly. The old 1.30 assumed a 60-minute session. The new 0.90 is for the first 30 minutes.
So per minute, the value has actually gone up.
Drastically.
Yeah.
If you bill a 30-minute session now, you get roughly a 0.90 RVU. Before, if you did a 30-minute session, well, theoretically, you billed the full code, but payers often frowned on short sessions for that code or would audit you. Now, it is totally legitimized.
And if you do a longer session, say you do 45 minutes.
The add-on codes are valued around 0.44 to 0.50. So if you do a 45-minute session, which is a base plus an add-on, you are looking at roughly 1.35 to 1.4 V RVU total.
Which is higher than the old 1.30.
It is. So for clinicians who are diligent about their time and their documentation, this could actually be a net positive in terms of valuation.
But there is a reason the base code is worth so much more than the add-on. 0.90 for the first 30 minutes, but only 0.44 for the next 15. That is not linear at all.
No, it is not. And the Speech Association fought really hard for this specific structure. They used what is called the intensity argument.
Which is what exactly?
That the first 30 minutes of therapy are significantly harder than the subsequent minutes. The work is front-loaded.
Harder how? Walk me through that.
Think about the vignettes they used in the survey data to justify this to the Medical Association. They described real patient scenarios. One was a 10-year-old male stutterer with significant avoidance behaviors. Another was a 70-year-old male with moderate aphasia. The argument is that the cognitive load of setting up the session, establishing rapport, managing the patient's fatigue, introducing the complex task, that all happens up front. That is high-intensity work for the clinician.
So the first 30 minutes is the heavy lifting, and the next 15 is just maintaining the momentum.
Exactly. So the valuation curve is front-loaded to reflect human effort. which protects clinicians who do shorter, intense sessions. You do not get penalized for stopping at 30 minutes when the patient is fatigued.
That makes a lot of sense. It actually acknowledges the human element of the work.
It does. It acknowledges that therapy isn't an assembly line where every minute is equal.
Okay, so we understand the codes, we understand the complicated math, we understand the relative values. Now we need to dive into the timeline, because this is where the story gets a little bit political.
It's very tense.
Where are we right now in this process?
It is February 2026. The new codes have been approved for the 2027 book. The Speech Association basically did its victory lap last fall. But on February 23rd, just a few days ago, the Speech Association released a very strange, very urgent update to their members.
I have the document right here. It says, ASHA has been notified that a code change application has been submitted by another party.
Another party.
It sounds like a mystery novel. Who is the other party?
The update does not say, and it likely cannot say, because of the strict confidentiality agreements we mentioned at the start of the show.
But what does it mean? Someone is trying to change the codes again before they even launch.
Yes, the codes were approved back in September 2025, but the Medical Association has an editorial panel meeting coming up in April 2026. And someone, maybe a payer, maybe another medical specialty, maybe a dissenting group within the field, has submitted a proposal to alter what was just agreed upon.
That introduces a massive element of uncertainty into everything we just talked about. We just spent all this time explaining the 10 code system, and now you are telling me it might change in 2 months.
It is entirely possible. They might be trying to consolidate the codes back down. They might be challenging the combo code. They might be trying to lower the RVUs. We genuinely do not know.
So for you listening right now, this is the call to action. You cannot just sit back and wait for January 2027 to roll around.
No. If you care about this, if you care about whether auditory processing is included or if the values stay high, you have to get involved right now.
What are the critical dates?
Mark your calendar for March 6th, 2026.
What happens on March 6th?
Registration opens for the Medical Association meeting. And more importantly, the agenda materials get posted publicly.
So that is when the mystery is revealed. That is when we see what the other party is actually proposing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once you register, you can submit comments. You can technically participate in the meeting, which is happening April 30th through May 2nd, 2026. It's a hybrid format, so you can join virtually.
So the listener can actually influence this process.
Yes. The process is open to public comment, but you have to be in the system. You have to register. If you do not register, you have no voice.
And after that April meeting, what is the rest of the timeline?
Then it goes to the federal level. In summer 2026, the notice of proposed rulemaking comes out. November 2026, the final rule is published. And January 1st, 2027, the new codes go live.
So we are in the final inning of a very long game here.
We are. And the score is still unsettled.
I want to touch on that confidentiality agreement one more time before we start to wrap up, because it seems incredibly restrictive based on these sources.
It is. I have read through the source text on this. It defines confidential information as basically everything. The code descriptors, the values, the arguments made in the room.
It says here, any non-public communication between a panel member and an interested party.
That is exactly why the Speech Association's update was so vague. They are legally gagged. They can ring the alarm bell, but they cannot tell you exactly where the fire is. They need you to go look at the agenda on March 6th yourself.
That is wild. It puts a lot of responsibility on the individual clinician to be proactive.
It does. It shifts the burden from the professional association to the everyday membership.
So as we close out this deep dive, let us summarize the situation for everyone.
The summary is this. 1, 92507, the 60-minute bucket, is dead. 2, it is being replaced by 10 time-based codes split by disorder. Fluency, speech, language, voice, and the combo. 3, auditory processing is notably absent from the individual headers. 4, you must master the midpoint rule, 16 minutes for the base, 8 minutes for the add-on. And 5, you must watch out for the 32-minute rule if you are trying to build 2 base codes in one day.
And the final point. The fight isn't over. March 6th is the day to pay attention.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought today. Something to mull over on your own as you process all this. We are watching the datafication of speech therapy. We are moving from viewing a session as an event, a holistic interaction between a therapist and a human patient, to viewing it as a stream of specific data points. 15 minutes of fluency, 15 minutes of language.
It is the industrialization of the practice.
Exactly. And the provocative question is this. With this high volume flag that started it all, with the utilization doubling from 2017 to 2022, is this new system designed to finally recognize the complexity of the work? Is it a promotion for the field? Or is it a system designed to restrict care? Is the complexity a feature? Or is it a bug designed to make you bill less because the math is simply too hard?
That is the cynical but highly necessary question to ask right now. Is this about better care, or is it about adding friction?
The fact that another party is submitting changes right now suggests that someone out there thinks the current plan is either too generous or too broken.
Indeed.
We will find out on March 6th.
Thank you.
Until then, keep your stopwatches handy. You are going to need them.
You certainly will.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We will see you next time.